Thomas Pynchon is a very interesting author. He's one of the few people who it is physically impossible to separate the art from the artist from, because there seems to be no artist. He is incredibly reclusive and very successful in doing so. There really isn't much known about him outside of a few accounts from his college classmates and some from high school. He's a very reclusive author, but he writes so magnificently and in such a gripping way that it makes many people like myself like desperate to know more about him and understand him more, because he writes in some of the most beautiful prose and touches on some of the most interesting topics that I have ever read. And a lot of people's entry point when it comes to Pynchon, myself included, is his shortest novel, but as many recall, one of his best, one of the most encompassing works of his, The Crying of Lot 49. Now, oh my gosh, this book is really something for me. I've been interested in Pynchon for a few months now, and I've held off truly getting into him because I knew that he was a very dense author. He was rather difficult to read, and I wanted to finish a lot of my academic reading for school before I really got a chance to dive into his work. So I finished up my reading for school, and this was the first thing that I grabbed because I was desperate to read what he wrote like. I wanted to understand him, and I went into it with very high expectations. This book was said to be the quintessential taste of Pynchon, that if you wanted to understand what Pynchon was like, what he was about, this is what you want to read, and that this will give you a taste of him that you'll get more in full from reading his other books, Gravity's Rainbow, Mason and Dixon, Inherent Vice, Vineland, that The Crying of Lot 49 contained elements of all of those books. And so it was a great starting point, which is why I gravitated to it and why many other people gravitate to it. And it soared past my expectations. Like I said, I had high expectations of both Pynchon and The Crying of Lot 49, and it was just so much better than I thought it was going to be. I was worried it was going to leave me in the dust and that I was going to be so lost and it was going to come off as pure fodder, but no, it was so incredible. I truly do love this book. So, yeah, let's get into the review. I'm going to start with the spoiler-free portion. The Crying of Lot 49 and Pynchon as an author in general is best described as a work of paranoia. And I know what you're thinking. What does that mean? It's such an abstract way to describe an author and to describe writing that I didn't really understand what it was like either when I heard that this was a paranoid book. I was like, what does that even mean? What does paranoid writing even feel like? And then the only way to really understand that is to just read Pynchon. I didn't get a grasp of it until I truly got a copy of The Crying of Lot 49 and started reading it, and I was like, oh, I understand what they mean now. I understand this grand theme of conspiracy, of paranoia, of greater systems. And it's just Pynchon does it so masterfully. It's quite impressive. The story follows this character, Oedipa Maas, as she tries to unwind this sort of conspiracy that has been left in her lap. She has been named as the executrix in one of her former lover's wills, which means that it is her job. She's a co-executrix along with another person, and it's their job to actually execute the will. So they're not the people who... It's not like you were named in the will as like, oh, you get to inherit their stuff. No, like they're the ones actually doing all the legal legwork, which is odd because Oedipa is not a lawyer. So and that creates this dilemma of, well, I've been named, I have no idea how to do this, but I've got to do this. And it leads her down this deep rabbit hole of things he might have been connected with. And it pokes and pokes and pokes at her curiosity, at her. She lives a very ordinary, traditional life, and being the executrix of this will, and having this doorway into this new realm, and the curiosity that comes with that, it really entices her to go down that rabbit hole, and it leads to just kind of madness, madness and insanity, and just conspiracy to levels that both she and the reader didn't think were possible. It's so fascinating. It's incredibly dense. No word feels wasted. It feels like this is a very small thing, 150 pages. I think this is technically a novella. I think this is 50,000 words, but it reads like a 500-page book. It is incredibly dense, but that density is what makes it incredible for me. It feels very rich, and ripe for the rereading. I am very excited to reread this in the coming years and to extract more out of it. It's one of those books that you can always peel back a new layer on. But yeah, I think it's a great work on conspiracy, on greater systems, on paranoia, and it's a wonderful work of surrealism and absurdism. There's so much about this book that is it's so odd. It almost feels like it doesn't take place in our world. I mean, it takes place in California, but there's so much. It really leans into the absurd. It's so into the surreal. The names are really silly. A lot of the things that happen just feel really goofy and silly. It's like a world where nothing makes sense. And in this world where nothing makes sense, there's a web. There's a web connecting things. There's like one word or organization that seems to be weaved into every little bit. And in a world where already the things that don't make sense are amplified, when you layer a web of things that are connected on top of this, it amplifies that madness of figuring out why are all of these connected when nothing connects, when nothing makes sense. Why do these connect? And the fact that they connect makes no sense, but I need to figure it out. I need to know what's going on because it's driving me crazy, and it feels like they may control me. I sound like I'm as crazy as Oedipa explaining the plot of the book. It's really one of these books that you just have to read. You just have to jump into. It's so wacky and crazy, but it's such a wild ride. You feel like you're on this ride with Oedipa unraveling the mystery. So, yeah, that's the spoiler-free review. Let's now get into the spoiler-full review and unravel this mystery. The Trastero. Oh boy, the Trastero. Such an interesting organization. And Pynchon is so smart with how he writes these books, giving every little bit a history. It's a history that you're not really meant to comprehend. You're not going to remember every little bit about where the Trastero came from, the Thurn Taxis postal system, all the treachery that came with founding that, and how the Trastero came about in opposition to that, and then how the Trastero and Thurn Taxis came into Warfinger's play, the Tragedy of the Courier, or I think that's the name of it. You're not meant to remember every one of these details. That's not what this book's about. But he puts it there because he cares. Because he cares, and he knows that there are going to be people who care. He's devoted to accuracy and I suppose world building. I guess this counts as world building. But it's just masterful. Everything has a place. It really amplifies this sense of conspiracy, because if he's able to trace everything back for you, draw a clear map, but practically telling you there is a connection here. Oedipa is not that crazy. She's not as crazy as she may seem. And you're going to feel crazy with her because you know that there's just so much information regarding this system, this conspiracy, that it feels like there very well could be a real conspiracy. And I guess that's also the greater question of the book is there a conspiracy? You start to doubt whether the Trastero is even real at the end, and you find out there's almost just as much connection with Pierce Inverarity, the dead former lover, there's almost as many connections to Inverarity as there are to the Trastero, as if the Trastero and Inverarity are one. Now, Inverarity is this very influential figure in the San Narcisos area, in all of California, it seems like. He owns so much, he did so much, he's a very influential and affluent figure that if he is involved in the Trastero, he's likely to be one of the most involved members. So there's a chance that he could be just a member of it and just be a very high-profile member of it. But the other reality that Oedipa is terrified of is that this is all just a fun concoction of Inverarity to mess with Oedipa as a way for him to live beyond his death. And at the very end of the book, when they sell off his stamp collection and there's some mystery buyer who's unnamed who comes to the crying of it, we don't actually get to see who he is, who that person is. And I believe it's implied that, like, this might be Inverarity, he might not be dead. Of course, we don't find out who it is. It could obviously just be a random person. It could be that dude from the IA, I believe is what that organization is called, that Oedipa meets at the bar. It could be that guy. It could also be Metzger, who runs off. But it could also be Inverarity, who is not actually dead, and this is just a grand scheme, a grand ruse, you know? But I like that he leaves it ambiguous. I don't think this would have felt the same if we got to find out who that was. If it was a high-profile member of the real Trastero, or if it was an agent of Inverarity orchestrating the Trastero. So I'm glad that they didn't reveal that. I touched on this earlier in my spoiler-free review, but just the literary aesthetic of this book is so, like, it feels so trippy. They mention, I mean, psychedelics and drug use are kind of not really a recurrent theme of this book, but they're mentioned multiple times. It really does feel like an acid trip at times. It feels like you're on some sort of hallucinogen while you're going through this. And it feels like it starts off cool, it starts off fun, like there's no stakes, and then the stakes quickly appear, and it starts to get scary. It feels like your trip is turning bad. I wrote down after I read the first chapter, I wrote down the vibe that I was getting, which I think stands true throughout the remainder of the book. But I described it as this wicked hippie vibe, LSD and coke fueled, new green and purple neon smoking indoor chic suit vibe. That's kind of the vibe that I got throughout a lot of the book. And then it turns into this kind of like this dry horror, like you get a sense of this true dryness of California because she's doing so much driving between the cities that it turns into this, like, I don't really know. It's things start to go bad. It starts to feel like a horror show. It's really interesting how things turn around. They go from being fun and let's explore this new will. Let's have an affair with my co-executor, and then it turns into Oedipa literally begging the universe to stop showing the Trastero to her, that she doesn't want to see it anymore, that she prays that she is mentally ill rather than this thing be real, because she also feels like it's ripped all the men from her life. And that's another theme, is this is a rather feminist work. It's kind of interesting because you have this character Oedipa who she's this housewife, of course, and she gets just kind of brought in, or invited into this world of something greater, something deeper, where she can explore it. And she's invited. It's like she's given a chance to escape from being a housewife and do this for a little bit, which is a role that you would normally not see in the 60s, both in real life and in literature. I mean, this was published in the 60s. This is Pynchon's kind of taking a risk here, giving a female main character this much autonomy. This is a role that typically a man would fulfill in literature of this time. And as she does this, she mentions this verbatim, I believe, in the last chapter, that all the men have been ripped from her life. She's lost Mucho to LSD. He's a completely different guy. Metzger runs off with one of the Paranoid's girlfriends, which I'll touch on them later. She Inverarity has died. The guy from IA isn't picking up her calls. Hilarious is a Dr. Hilarious is a former SS soldier who's hunted now for his crimes. Genghis Cohen, she lost him. He's more interested in pursuing the Tristero and the stamps, the counterfeits, and she doesn't want any part of that. And then there's the other guy, whoever the Maxwell's Demon guy is. I forget his name. He could have been a sense of comfort, and she lost him too. Just losing all the men in her life. It feels like almost a commentary on this greater system that doesn't want her to figure it out, you know. But at the same time, it also feels like it's got her right where they want her. It doesn't ever feel like she's close to figuring it out, or if she is figuring it out, it doesn't feel like it's ever any sort of relief or catharsis for her. It's always this dread of wishing that she was never on this path in the first place, but she's on it now, and she can't stop it. So it's fascinating. It's just so cool the way this conspiracy unfolds. How she tracks down the dude who puts on the production of the play. How she tries to tie Maxwell's Demon to that. How she figures out the secret with the counterfeits on the stamps. How she figures out how the IA existed and how that branched off of the Tristero. That maybe it's something even greater, that the IA isn't even that it's now stemming off branches that the Tristero can't even control. But the idea of the Tristero not having control of something is impossible to imagine. It really is so good at hammering home this theme of powerlessness, of something truly so much greater than you, weaving every single part of your life almost in a fatalistic way so that you don't ever really have any autonomy. You're going to do exactly what the system wants you to do, and you're going to find out exactly what it wants you to find out, regardless of whether you want that or not. It's so, and I think it's so pertinent to the state of the world today. With it feels very evocative of the whole Epstein situation, where it feels like every day, every week, there's a new person that's connected to what went on in that ring, that new emails leak that incriminate new people, new circles, new cover-ups. It's like just when you think the scope can't get any bigger, it gets bigger and it gets darker. It's an incredibly, like, this reminds me a little bit, very faintly, because it feels a bit disingenuous to compare the two, but the connection between the Tristero here and Epstein feels kind of similar to how Ling Ma, as I reviewed in Severance, kind of predicted COVID almost, which, because of the vastly different scenarios there, it feels a bit, like I said, disingenuous to compare. But it almost feels like a predictive work, or an allegory, showing us how daunting and how hopeless and just like burdening it can feel when you know there is a system greater than you connecting and weaving everything, and you just feel powerless against it. Not only do you feel powerless, but you are powerless against it. He does a great job of explaining that, and I think that's a very relevant feeling in this current climate, in this day and age, because, as I've said, everything with the Epstein files and the people who were involved in that cover-up, in those acts, it feels very similar to that, the way that new people become involved with the Tristero, with Inverarity, with the conspiracy. It seems to encompass everything. The whole city of San Narciso seems to be infected in the same way that the whole political and celebritous culture feels infected. It's very, there are some very startling and familiar parallels there. But final review, conclusion, as daunting and as scary as this book can feel reading it, and when comparing it to real life, I love this book. This was one of the quickest 5 stars I've ever given, and it is one of my favorite books. I think it's in my top 3. I'd probably place this at number 2. I absolutely love this. I think the themes of conspiracy and paranoia are fantastically done. I love them. Love the characters. I love the goofiness. I love the surrealism, the absurdism, the prose. Just, it feels like everything about this novel just is tailored to me. It feels everything that I like is in this book. And it's just, it's books like this that make me love literature, that make me love books. I adore it. I think this is a capstone work of American literature. And I highly encourage anyone who is even remotely interested to check it out. You might not understand it, and that's okay. But this thing has been out for like 60 years. There's tons of companion guides out there, a lot of people who have talked about it and have posted about it, written about it, that if you do want to figure out what Pynchon was talking about or what a certain thing means, where it might have stemmed from, there are going to be resources for that. And it's up to you how deep you want to deep. It's kind of its own Tristero in a way. Yeah, but it's a great book. I absolutely love it. I love the prose. I love the imagery. I love the characters. Love the names, the surrealism, the absurdism. It's just amazing. Everything from the paranoids who are, it's inexplicable why they are hanging around, but they contribute to this surrealism, to the funny names, Genghis Cohen, like, of course there's somebody named that, to the Israeli sting plot against Dr. Hilarious, the former Nazi. It just everything, just when you think you're getting into the thick of the plot and all the surrealism is going to stop hitting you, there's more. And it just makes the world that Oedipa lives in even harder to make sense of. And by extension, makes the grand conspiracy even more daunting and just gutting. It's just great. I'm gushing, but it really is wonderful and one of my favorite books. I can't wait to reread it, and I can't wait to read more Pynchon. There's a few I want to read after. I mean, I want to read all of his at one point, but I think the next 3 on my list will be Vineland, then probably Gravity's Rainbow, his big one, and then either Inherent Vice, Against the Day, or Mason and Dixon. I'm not really sure. It depends on what the rest of my reading schedule looks like. But yeah, Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. Highly recommend. Like I said, 5 stars. So yeah, if you like this review or have anything you want to say about the book, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to have a discussion about this book. I feel like I could talk about it for ages. If you liked the review, make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.